Bluers, how's it going? Welcome back to the Blue Army podcast. This is episode 48 and we hope you enjoyed our Christmas special. That's right, a lot of people didn't get onto it straight away. It was a Christmas special because we had Chris Billy on the podcast. That's right, I told you before I even told you who was going to be on the Christmas special, and I hope you all really enjoyed the Christmas special. And today joining me on the podcast is not only one but two guests, and first of all I'm going to introduce you to everybody's favourite regular co-host all the way from out west this week. So you might think there's something a little different about his audio. That's because he's out west this week. It's Wills. Wills is joining me. Hello, Wills. You all right, mate?
All right, Skelly. Yeah, I'm just phoning from a phone box because that's all we have out west.
That's all we have out west. Well, and we do appreciate you standing in the middle of a field in your phone box. Hopefully there won't be too many sheep knocking on the door by the end of the recording, because we all know what they're like, trying to tap the change out of these phone boxes in these rural areas. But mate, yeah, we're going to have somebody else come in to join us in just a few minutes. He's in the waiting room and he knows what's happening on today's show, but you don't really know what's happening on today's show, and neither do the listeners. So let's tell you guys what we've got planned. Yeah. So this week on the show, because we've got no football to talk about from the weekend, and we don't have any football really to talk about going forward, because Carlisle's last two matches have both been cancelled due to, COVID restrictions, unfortunately. COVID precautions, COVID restrictions, COVID tests, and depleting squad numbers have all contributed towards Carlisle having a little bit of deja vu, because this kind of happened to us last season at this exact point. But the difference being, last season we were on a run of really good form and we had some really good momentum behind us, and a little bit of a break kind of ruined that for us. And this time round it's different, because we've not had a fantastic run of form. We are doing better than what we've been doing recently, over recent months, obviously gathering a couple of points up and being able to hold teams and things like that. But mate, we don't have a lot of football to talk about, which means that this week we're going to do a little bit of a half season. That's true. We're not the only ones. Lots of games are being cancelled, yeah. But it means this week we're going to do a bit of like a half season sort of review, and we're going to be bringing in Liam Denwood from Blue Army TV to help us discuss all those things. But first, mate, there's a few things to get out of the way. And as tradition here on the Blue Army podcast, it's time for the Blue Army podcast Joke of the Week. Is he having a laugh? I think he's trying to. It's the Blue Army podcast. Right, here we go. Joke of the week time, mate. Nice and quick one for you. What do you call a singing laptop?
Oh, I don't know. What do you call a singing laptop?
Adele.
It's the funniest one.
We cracked you again. We're having a good run. We're having a good run of form with the Blue Army podcast Joke of the Week. That's right. What do you call a singing laptop? Adele. Like Adele computers. Yay! Fantastic. Well, just before we bring Liam Denwood in, mate, I tried to do a little bit of a news roundup, and there wasn't a lot in the way of relevant news. Unfortunately, most of the news articles around the News and Star and things like that are based upon what Chris Beech wanted to see out of his squad going into the next game, or news about games being cancelled. There's not a lot of things to cover in that department. But what there has been is some good things happening for a couple of ex-Blues. And first of all, I'm going to talk about Peter Murphy, who is currently in charge at Annan Athletic. Now, Peter Murphy's Annan Athletic have been going through quite a nice run of form at the moment. They've won their last 4 league games, they thrashed the top of the league opposition in their Boxing Day fixture 5-1, and currently find themselves third in Scotland's bottom professional tier. Is it a professional tier? We'll have to do a little bit more research into finding out if it's. I think some parts are, some parts aren't. Yeah, a bit semi-pro, probably more semi-pro than pro. But yeah, it's nice to see ex-Blues doing well in their current endeavours, mate. And Peter Murphy was obviously one of those names that was getting touted around the Brunton Park job when Chris Millen took the position. Now, obviously, ex-players always get thrown into the hat in those conversations. But yeah, it's nice to see, isn't it? Murphy doing well.
Yeah, definitely. And, he's been there for quite a while, hasn't he? So is he maybe on his third or fourth year there? So, he'll be his squad and he put his stamp on there. So it's good to see that kind of paying dividends.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And there's some more ex-Blues that were doing quite well in the coaching department. Was a defensive duo, Danny Livesey and Simon Grand. They took temporary charge of, let's have a look at that. I think it was Chester. They took temporary charge over. Sorry?
Yeah, it's Chester.
Yeah, they took temporary charge over at Chester and did pretty well with the opportunity that they were given, but haven't been given the full-time job. There's a manager that has stepped in there, former Newcastle player Steve Watson, an ex-Gateshead, ex-Yorkshire City boss. So Steve Watson does have a bit of experience and pedigree under his belt, but it's nice to see more ex-Blues getting the opportunity to step on to those coaching ladders and then maybe one day being able to come back to the club and give us a helping hand. Now, I've got some lovely memories of Simon Grand. I always liked Simon Grand and the way that they would kind of some games get thrown a bone and get thrown up front for the last sort of 10 minutes of a game. And he would sort of be that replacement for when Derek Holmes' legs seemed to be getting a bit tired and he wanted to get another big physical unit playing up front there. Mate, you've got to be happy with that, right? Surely. It's ex-players doing well.
Yeah. And, I'm constantly impressed by how long them two have been able to have a partnership going for, because they've been together. They were together at Barrow as well, and they're now both together at Chester. I don't know if there are any other club. I mean, throughout their careers, they've been a centre-back pairing at several clubs and potentially a managerial pairing in the future as well.
Oh, yeah, man. And that might be quite cool because at Chester, that seems to be the way that they've been doing things as of late, is using those sort of duo manager roles. Now, mate, let's get into the nitty-gritty of what we're really here to do. And able to do that, I'm going to introduce now Mr. Liam Denwood from Blue Army Television. We're just admitting him into the room. And can you hear us, Liam? I hopefully haven't muted him.
No, there'll be a little symbol.
That's it. There's no camera, but Liam, can you hear us? Oh, there's some weird noises going on. I don't know if Liam's there. Liam, are you there? There he is. Hey, there we go. We're all in the room together. Can you hear us, Liam? Yeah.
That's better.
Spot on.
Yeah. I had an issue with the microphone, that's all.
That's all good, man. That's all good. I'm not used to doing these freeway calls anyway, so it's a bit odd for all of us. But yeah, welcome Liam Denwood from Blue Army TV. Welcome back to the Blue Army podcast. What have you been doing recently? We've got no games to talk about.
I know it's miserable, isn't it? I was meant to be going to free away, but then we're going to happen by the looks of things. But yeah, it's just been enjoying Christmas recently. How was yours Christmas?
Yeah, okay. Spent in isolation, but isolation with the family. So
that's it. Wills hasn't been feeling too good recently. Obviously, I was gutted because Boxing Day was going to be my big day off work to properly enjoy myself, and that game got cancelled. So I'm gutted about that. But mate, Christmas itself was spot on. I really can't complain. Now, Liam, what you're here to do is to sort of like add a bit more spice to the mix, because me and Wills had an idea, because there's been no football to play this week, of doing sort of like a half-season review and handing out a couple of awards that don't really obviously mean anything to the players themselves, but it means something to us, obviously, because we're the ones giving out the awards. So both of you have had about an hour with these questions and categories, so you kind of know what's coming up, and we're just going to talk, debate, and discuss a couple things that have been happening in the season up until this point, in almost like an awards style presentation. So hopefully it'll be a bit of fun, and it's better than doing newt. So to kick things
just
off, go on.
Clarify first, are these questions that you're asking, is this of 2021 or is it of the first half of this season?
Well, see, I've kind of done mine just for the first half of the season. I was going to go and do the whole year 2021, but I'm just going to do the first half of the season. But if you guys have I've got a bit confused, and it'll be my fault anyway, I'm sure I can accommodate your answers.
I think I was thinking that as well.
Yeah, I'm sure I can accommodate some answers if you guys get a bit confused. But the first one to kick us off with is a nice and easy one, I think, anyway. And I'll kick things off. I'll say my answer to this question first. But the category is, for the first question, Carlisle United's best signing so far this season. And in my opinion, the best signing Carlisle United have made so far this season, the person who has made the biggest, most positive impact on the squad so far has to be Mr. Mark Howard, the goalkeeper. That's my opinion. I think the experience that he's brought into the squad to steady the ship has made the most amount of impact. I know, obviously, you guys might be thinking Brandon Gibson maybe might be the player because he's scored a lot of goals for us so far this season. But I just feel that Mark Howard has given his defence that bit of confidence to be going on with and gave us the platform of something to build on going forward. Now, Liam, I'll hand over to you, mate. Agree or disagree? Have you got someone else?
Well, now that you've said that, I agree. But when I about Mark Howard, but yeah, I think you can make a very good case for both of them. Gibson has come in and been, we'd be in the relegation zone without Gibson, and I think we'd be in the relegation zone without Howard as well. So it's them two things. It's he's obviously been a very good sign and brought that experience in. And I think as well with Mark Howard, he shows that you can get them kind of quality players in the free agent market. So he's more of like a statement signing. And I think if he signs a contract, he's our best signing. But because it's on such a short-term contract at the minute, I'm going to have to go with Jordan Gibson because we've got him for a little bit longer.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. As a smarter signing in the long term, definitely. Wills, what are you thinking?
So, I mean, I'd kind of like recognised that it was between Gibson and Howard, and I'd gone with Gibson. But like Liam says there, having heard your argument for Howard, it seems like you've put together a better argument for Howard than I can put together for Gibson because of Howard's event as a whole. I went with Gibson because he was more impactful as a player, and you kind of like. You do kind of like think more regularly of players that score goals than you do keepers. So I kept finding myself drawn towards Jordan Gibson.
Yeah, well, you're both sticking with Gibson, so you've outgunned me, lads. Even though you've both admitted that I've had a better argument there, you both outgunned me and stuck to your guns, and somehow came away on top for the first category. I'll have one more go at trying to convince one of you, though. Obviously, Mark Howard is a fantastic example of what you can still do with the free agent market. Yes, if he does sign a longer-term contract to the end of the season, you might be more thinking that the impact is going to be more of a long-term role. Just think, this is what I'm thinking. If you take Gibson out of every game until the end of the season, or you take Mark Howard out of every game until the end of the season, out of those two players, I feel like if Howard was still in the squad, there's a chance we can stay up. But if Howard wasn't in the squad and Gibson was in the squad, I don't see the balance going necessarily that way. What do you have to say to that, Wills?
You know, you make a compelling argument, but I've just decided that, you know, I'm going to stick to what I originally said, just in the interests of good, just in the interests of good broadcasting. Don't think it would be as fun if kind of like we said Gibson, I said Gibson, Liam said Gibson, and then you just talked us both.
Your journalistic integrity gets ahead of you. Liam, are you going to stick to your guns as well? It looks like, eh?
Yeah, I'm sticking to my guns. If he signs if he signs for longer, I'll change my mind. You know, if that is an incentive for Howard to sign, then I don't know what it is. But for now, Gibson's the winner.
I hope you're listening, Howard. I genuinely hope you're listening. Yeah, I mean, all right then, lads. Fair enough. Gibson's winning this one. Best season, best signing of the season so far, going to Jordan Gibson. There, what was it? About £35,000 he cost us from Dundalk in Ireland. So. Yeah, it did cost a little bit of money. It wasn't a free contract, but it does have the better contract out of the two. I can see where you're both coming from. And yeah, I'll just have to accept the fact that I've been outnumbered on this particular question. So the next one going forward is the best goal so far this season. Now, I started off the last category. So, Liam, I'll hand over to you to kick off this one. What do you think has been the best goal scored by a Carlisle United player so far this season?
For me, I think it's going to have to be Brennan Dickinson's late equaliser against Scunthorpe, just because of the absolute limbs in the stadium when that went in. It was unbelievable. It's maybe not the best, you look at highlight reels, it's not like a banger from 30 yards out, but just what it meant, I think, is one of.
But yeah, mate, it was a hell of a strike. It meant a lot at the time, obviously, to get those points in the bag at a time against the team that you really need to be picking up points again. I do have something different. Wills, do you have something different?
Yeah, my pick is Joe Riley against Newport. This was a goal scored. Yeah, it was a goal scored in the first 30 seconds of the game? So that makes it stand out because we're out of the block so quick. Passing in the build-up to it. Again, the finish itself, there's been better finishes this season, but I always like a good team goal with some nice passing. And that's probably one of the best sort of passing moves I've seen us put together this season. So, yeah, Joe Riley versus Newport.
Yeah, okay. I mean, mine is also a Joe Riley goal, but mine's the first ever goal of the season because also of what it meant. It was scored in front of the home fans. It was Joe Riley from just outside the area. And it's one of those goals where you can do sound effects to it because you can just see the way that Riley's body turns and he hits the ball. You can just go almost do that, like that gun sort of kind of noises that goes with the goal. You can just sort of see him cock his leg in the right position and hit the ball, and it just goes bang. It's just one of those goals that just looks really nice, and it just aesthetically just a nice goal. It's a bit of a daisy cutter, but it's got the power to sort of ripple the back of the net in the bottom corner, and obviously being Carlisle's first goal of the season, which eventually did lead to Carlisle's first win of the season. That's the goal I'm going to give my nomination to. Now, obviously, we're not going to find a winner for absolutely every single category so far. But saying that my goal and Will's goals were scored by the same person, you might be more willing to put Joe Riley's hat on top of that category, so to speak, on this occasion. I mean, at least that's the way I'm writing it down anyway. And we'll move on to the next category, which is most exciting player to watch so far this season. Now, there was a lot at the start of this season said about the kind of player that Zach Clough was supposed to be. And a lot of people and a lot of sections of the support still don't believe that Zach Clough is living up to those expectations. Now, obviously, I'm not going to nominate him to be the most exciting player to watch so far this season because he just hasn't been. Wills, it is your turn to nominate somebody first for a category. But first, before we dive into that, let's have a little bit of a discussion about whether or not we're a little bit disappointed in what we've seen from Zach Clough so far this season. Wills, what do you reckon of Zach Clough so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, like, he's been exciting in moments. That goal that I mentioned that Riley scored, that was my best goal. He did some of the lovely stuff that led to the goal. So he's kind of like shown that off and on. And if he showed that regularly, then, you know, we probably would be talking about him in terms of like best signing and things like that. Whether Keith Millen has had long enough to kind of get something out of him yet. He's tried him in different positions and he seems to look a bit better out on the wing. But I don't think that's with. I think it's just kind of like Keith Millen's managed to sort of like slot him in there. So not giving up on him yet, but we haven't really, you know, we've seen glimpses of what he can do, but they've been few and far between.
Yeah. What about you, Liam? What have you got to say about Zach Clough so far this season?
I'll be honest with you. I think he's maybe gone in January. I can see that happening.
Really? In what way?
Just because I just don't think he looks happy on the pitch, and that what Chris Beech wanted to do. And now with a new manager who maybe doesn't have the same faith in him as Chris Beech did, honestly, it's an experiment, and it was an exciting one when he first came in, but it just hasn't worked, and I don't think he's happy at the club. So I can see him leaving, and I wouldn't say no to him leaving either if we get just a little bit of money for him.
Yeah, I can't see anyone paying money for him. I'm not.
I can imagine somebody maybe coming in and taking a chance on one of those loans to buy, maybe going forward. I think he's got enough of a reputation for somebody to take a chance on him. And he's worked with a few managers, so there's obviously a few managers that like him. So I'm not saying that that's not a possibility. Now you've definitely said it, I would consider getting that wage off the wage bill just to open up the possibility to bring in some recruits that are going to make an impact in January. But I mean, we might discuss January a little bit later on, lads, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up the fact that I've not been necessarily impressed by Zach Clough, and that's disappointing because he's one of the players that I was expecting to be impressed by this season. I was hoping that he would be a bit of a highlight for us this season, and it really hasn't worked out to be that way. And there doesn't really seem to be any kind of learning curve to Zach Clough. Every performance is very much the same. There's little glimpses here and there, or there isn't little glimpses here and there. And he's either coming off after 60 minutes or coming on after 70 minutes. And yeah, he doesn't seem to be getting the most out of him. And he doesn't cut the most enthusiastic figure either on the pitch. He's not that headstrong into these games. He doesn't seem like he's up for a battle at the moment. But yeah, we'll move back into the questions. The question obviously was, who's the most exciting player to watch? And Wills, I believe we were going to let you handle this one first.
Yes, I mean, I kind of answered this when I said about best signing, because it was kind of the reason why I fancied Gibson over Howard, and why I was more drawn to that is because the exciting player to watch is John Gibson. He is positive with the ball. He's got a bit of skill as well, so he'll kind of do something with it. He'll beat his man or pick out a pass. And he's kind of like probably the only player we've got at the moment who, if he gets the ball with players in front of him, you think, well, he's going to beat one or two of them and kind of create an opportunity for us.
Yeah, he's an exciting player to watch. Yeah. What I will say. Well, I get you on your feet. Yeah, he's one of those players that gets you out your seat, gets you on your feet, gets you clapping, keeps you warm in the winter, and that's always very well respected from a Brunton Park crowd because we do need things to keep us warm in those winter games. And Jordan Gibson. One of the reasons I didn't put him down as my signing of the season so far is because otherwise, I mean, we'll go through the list as we go through the list, but you'll see his name popping up more and more on my lists, and I didn't want it just to be a series of Gibson. So I did put Howard over Gibson because Gibson is top of so many of my lists, and this is one of the lists that he's top of for me. I also put him down as the most exciting player. When he picks up the ball on the right or the left, it doesn't really seem to make that much of a difference. He wants to carry it forward, and he's one of the few players that wants to carry the ball forward. In recent games, Callum Guy's been looking a little bit less shy, and he's quite happy to stay on the ball for a couple of touches and move forward with it before finding those passes, rather than just knocking them from deep. But that's only been in the last 2 to 3 games, and it looks like Millen's told him to hold the ball a little bit more and don't always look for the pass and maybe run with it once in a while. And that seems to be really helping the midfield situation out a lot at the moment. But yeah, Gibson, for a large part of the season, was the only player on the pitch that was happy with the ball at his feet and wanted to run with it. Liam, do you have a difference of opinion?
No, if it's a clean sweep now. All three Jordan Gibson. I doubt there's going to be many of these, but we all agree.
Yeah. It's what more is there to say about him, mate? You know, he's just one of those players that really seems to be able to get Carlisle fans off their seats so far this season. Now, the next category, obviously, I don't think we'll all agree on this one because once again, I've done my best to rattle my brain a bit and really figure out a good argument for somebody to suit this category. Now, I kind of think who you two might be leaning towards. And I mean, hopefully I'm wrong because it'll make more interesting content. But I've gone for a different player. This category that we're going to talk about now is Best Young Player. And I'm going to go first this time because it's been a little bit of a while. And I've gone for Brad Young. I've gone for Brad Young as Best Young Player so far this season. Yes, I know he's not one of ours. Yes, I know he's not a homegrown talent. And those were the first names that were going through my head. But as far as a young player who has contributed both goals and assists in the first team in competitive games this season, and somebody who has been making impactful impressions on the first team, not necessarily week in, week out, but can't be debated against the fact that he has scored goals and he has found the back of the net and he has maybe got a little bit more in way of confidence going forwards. Brad Young for me has to be Carlisle United's best young player so far this season. Wills, I'll pass over to you this time because last time I went first, I think Liam went second. So Wills, who's your best young player so far this season?
It was a difficult one to choose from, this one, because we haven't been giving the crop of youngsters that have come through our own academy as much of a chance, and Asian battles as well. Managers look for players who've got more nous, and maybe kind of a young player might get a chance here and there if they've got a bit of exciting potential about them. But there's also a tendency, I think, for managers to see young players as, if they have a bad game, it might take them a bit longer to kind of like pick themselves back up again. So we've had some young players that look like they've got a lot of potential, but this season's not proving to be a breakthrough season for any of them. So I've gone for one player who has kind of like cemented his place in the squad, in the team. He might be finding it a bit tougher going this season than he did last season, but he's still kind of proved his worth. That's Jack Armour.
You're going with Jack Armour, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and he does still get assists and goals from left back position. He's been under a bit more pressure defensively this season, but you know, as will happen when the team are performing poorly as a whole, you know, it puts defenders under more pressure. So it's so he's kind of, you know, still to be commended for how much potential he's shown at the age he's at.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, having a quick little look at his stats, I think there's only one or two players that match him in terms of being involved in match day squads so far this season, and things like minutes played, he's definitely in the top 3 for things like that. So as far as being a young man in the first team and contributing week in, week out, yeah, you've made a really good case there for Jack Armour. I do still forget he is only 20 years of age, and he only turned 20 earlier on this season. He started the season as a 19-year-old. Liam, who have you got as your best young player so far this season?
I was gonna say Brad Young, up until that Shrewsbury game where I remember it still. The chance that he missed where he could have squared it, it's still fresh in my mind. I still can't get over that. So yeah, I said Jack Armour as well, just because look, I think he's a quality defender, and you almost forget how young he is just. Fewer on the ball and in defence. He's by far, I think, the standout player, one of the standout players this season, along with Riley probably. But yeah, Jack Armour for me.
Yeah, I think if you've got players in the squad now that are going to go for money, you'd probably look at Jack Armour as being sort of one of the most likely.
Yeah, he's a big cash asset for Carlisle United, but also there's not a lot of in terms of being able to replace him at left back. We've always seemed to struggled when he's gone. I think he got suspended once this season for getting too many yellows. I don't think he's had a red card this year. But I honestly am surprised that both of you went for Jack Armour, because I thought somebody would put a cheeky little Sam Fishburne in there. And that's what I was trying to steer away from a little bit.
Yeah. Kind of really want to go with Sam Fishburne, but it's not quite happened for him yet. It's good he's getting there, you know. It's good he's getting kind of given the opportunities. You know,
well, like even Taylor Charters has been given more opportunities this season.
To give him best young player.
Yeah, it's been more recent, hasn't it? Sam Fishburne.
Come the end of the season, we might be saying his best young player.
Maybe, and that might be a prediction for later on. In the categories that we've got there. All right, lads, I'll have to concede that one. Jack Armour has to be the best young player so far this season for Carlisle United. You both made really good points there, and to be honest, I'm glad that I at least threw a spanner in the mix there, and we didn't agree with each other twice in a row. Right, so what we're going to do now, lads, is we're going to run through the positions in Carlisle United's team and then pick the best overall player from these categories. So obviously at first we've got best goalkeeper. Now normally it would be a straightforward one person to pick kind of horse race, and I mean it kind of is. I'm pretty sure we're all going to agree on this particular one, but Carlisle have had a number of goalkeepers playing in goal this season, namely talking about Lucas Jensen, Magnus Norman, and Mark Howard. Now, Liam, I'm going to hand over to you to nominate the best goalkeeper so far this season for Carlisle United, and I'm pretty sure we're all going to be in agreement about it. Knock your socks off, lad. What have you got?
It's just Mark Howard. There's not really much competition. He's been class when he's come in. He's kept Magnus Norman out of the team. And I think that's all the evidence you really need for this. I really hope he stays in January.
Yeah, I'd like to see him stay in January. Magnus Norman doesn't really seem to have filled the backroom staff or the squad with much confidence with his performances at the start of the season. I'll be honest that they still ring shadows in my head of a couple of back passes going back to Norman and him trying to put his foot through it and just daisy cutting it straight into an attacker. And he got away with it at least twice.
I was going to say,
at the start of the season.
We kind of that didn't actually cost us any goals. There was some clear kind of like weaknesses in Magnus Norman's game. But yeah, it didn't actually... I can't remember the time when Magnus Norman did something like that and we conceded because of it. We got lucky.
I feel like we got... I think he
and for
got
that
lucky.
reason, my best keeper is Magnus. No, yeah,
I mean, same lads. Mine's Mark Howard as well. When I first saw Lucas Jensen at pre-season at Chorley, he looked like a unit. And because we've just seen the World Cup with Donnarumma in goal for Italy, and obviously the big man doing so well as a penalty stopper.
Test with Donnarumma.
Oh, well, yeah. Maybe I got a little bit excited. Maybe I went a little bit too far. Maybe, I predicted a bit too much for Lucas Jensen. I still have confidence in him. I feel like he's going to be a good goalkeeper. He's still a young man, and he's still obviously got a Premier League team's sort of, training facilities behind him. So I guess he'll sort of see.
Very young for a goalkeeper.
Yeah, very young for a goalkeeper. I can't imagine him not getting the international sort of like mentions because it's not like Denmark are flush with too many goalkeepers when it comes to number 3s and number 4s on international duty. So I can imagine him being around the sort of championship top flight for most of his career. But it's one of those things that just hasn't worked out for him, or maybe the backroom staff just don't have the confidence in him. And I'm Mark Howard as well. It has to be Mark Howard. It's clean sweep for Mark Howard for the best goalkeeper. So he's going into the hat for best overall player this season. So the next category is obviously best defender. Now, the person I've got written down would have made a very good case for most improved player, which is a category that we've got further down the line. I've gone for Corey Whelan. I think Corey Whelan maybe started the season, the first 1 or 2 games, didn't fill a lot of people with confidence, including myself. And more as the season has gone on, seems to have really pushed himself into one of the first names that goes on that team sheet, one of the most consistent performers that we have, and physically one of the most imposing players we have in the squad. Somebody that can really put a striker off his game, somebody that can really make attackers feel uncomfortable in a one-on-one marking situation. And that's what's been really impressive for me so far this season for Corey Whelan, is the fact that when he's assigned to win a striker, he seems to be able to put them in his back pocket nice and quiet and keep them there for most of the game. I'll throw over to Liam this time. Liam, who have you got for your best defender?
I've already said him today, but Jack Armour, just because, he's the one that I'm the most confident with. When they're on the ball, Morgan Feeney to sort of make a mistake, but Jack Armour, some of his tackles and just the confidence I've got in him, especially at such a young age, if he stays at the club, he'll become like Danny Granger, club legend sort of status. But Jack Armour is I think he's the best player in that back four by a country mile, to be honest with you. So yeah, I'm going to say him.
Yeah, I can't believe how much Jack Armour's flown under my radar, actually. Yeah, it's another good point there, and another good Jack Armour point on the board. Wills, what are you saying? Best defender?
I feel like some of your listeners might think that I've become this guy's biggest fan, just finding myself not quite bigging him up, but I think I've given him a couple of Man of the Match awards. And it's Rod McDonald.
Rod.
I think of the defenders that we've got, he's the senior one until Mella came in, obviously. But, you know, in terms of centre-backs, and it seems to be the one of the players around him who kind of like has the biggest effect of the players around him. Whelan, but I kind of feel that Cody Whelan alongside McDonald is better than Whelan alongside Feeney. Similar kind of thing if we were talking about Feeney. I think he kind of plays better alongside McDonald. McDonald, although he's kind of got a bit of a reputation for some of the mistakes that he made. I think they were mostly last season, and he seems to have cut a lot of that out of his game this season. So, I mean, we've not been great defensively. So I would say I won't quite go so far as to say best of a bad bunch, but best of a medium.
Yeah, the defence was probably.
Because of course, when I mentioned Jack Armour before, I did say he struggled a little bit defensively compared to last season.
Yeah,
so
is that his on and off days, Armour? I feel like
if we're talking purely about goal stopping and defensive duties, then that kind of like leans me a bit more towards McDonald.
Yeah, I do feel like the defence was one of the harder places to pick a best player from. There's been quite sort of a level playing field for most of the defenders when you're talking about Whelan, McDonald, Armour, and to a certain extent now Mellor, because I don't think Mellor has really put too many foot wrong since he started in the team, and I've been quite impressed by his leadership.
No, I think like with an injury he had. Yeah, with an injury, I feel like we haven't seen enough of Mellor yet because he missed a good few matches, I think, with an injury.
Yeah. So I feel like there's still ways to go this season, and the sort of like it's a good thing that we've all gone for somebody different in the defence because it does show that sort of like level of performance that Carlisle United's defence have been contributing throughout the season. Now, I will say this though, lads. If we didn't get pillaged at the start of the season, George Tanner would probably be flying by now in that defence. He'd absolutely be destroying this league. And I really miss George Tanner in that right back position. Yeah, obviously, I've just mentioned Mellor being a really nice, consistent performer, but that's the thing that Tanner wasn't necessarily a consistent performer. Some games he could be your man of the match, and on a bad day he'd be all right. You know, he had that extra level to his game. Whereas I think Mellor's just quite consistently a 7 out of 10 kind of player. Yeah, maybe. But I don't think we're going to come to an agreement on best defender there. So we've got nominations for Corey Whelan, Jack Armour, and Rod McDonald. We'll move on to best midfielder. And Wills, I think it's your turn to go first this time on this category. Best midfielder, who have you got and why?
I didn't catch that. Who's going first?
Oh, you're going first, Wills.
I'm going first. Best midfielder. I'm going to give it to Joe Riley.
Joe Riley?
I think, midfield's one of those places where we looked really stable last season. We had kind of a midfield three set up of Guy, Mellish and Riley, and they were all able to work sort of bits that were lacking. You know, we could get away with playing John Mellish as a central midfielder more last season, the way we were playing. This season, it's not kicked on as much, and we've tried. You know, I mean, we've had to kind of like drop the week in, week out, this is your three-man midfield, because we've had to try other things. So tried like a midfield four, and players like Brennan Dickinson have come in there more. Joe Riley is, through injury and sometimes just through tactics, has found his chances limited, or is not putting many bad performances. And even though not all of those performances were in midfield this year, Callum Guy's had a bit of an off year. John Mellish has had a really off year. No one else has really kind of come in and staked a claim. You'd still say that Callum Guy has come through it and, you know, it remains the linchpin central midfielder. But in terms of performances over the first half of the season, or good performances in him. So give it Joe Riley.
Yeah. He does seem to have that extra bit of room to go to when it comes to having a good performance. Liam, what have you got? Who have you got, and why for best midfielder?
Exactly the same for exactly the same reasons. Just he's the only one that's been really consistent in that midfield. John Mellish hasn't played well. Callum Guy, the captain, hasn't really put in as many good performances as I'd like. It's just Joe Riley's been head and shoulders above the rest of them, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I've gone for Joe Riley as well on this occasion. So for the second time today, we've got a clean sweep of nominees. And Joe Riley, regardless of the amount of games he's missed through injury, and I feel like part of that is on the backroom staff and on the management, maybe rushing him back into the team because he has made such a great impact in the games that he has played in. So maybe a little bit too, I don't know, too eager to get him back onto the pitch. And
or maybe because he's not seen.
Oh, sorry.
I think maybe because he's not seen as an out-and-out central midfielder, and that kind of means that sometimes he ends up getting dropped to the bench because there's a system that Keith Millen wants to play, and there's not a space in that system for Joe Riley. Should Joe Riley kind of start, should Keith Millen maybe be thinking with Joe Riley as one of the two? Don't just think of him as a right-sided player who is fine in a three-man midfield or as a right winger, but kind of gets left out of the two-man midfield, and just kind of put him in there based on the fact that he has performed in a three-man midfield, so he knows his kind of central midfield duties, and he's a consistent performer.
I quite liked him out on the right, not as one of those sort of like right-sided out-and-out attackers. Now, it's an old-school sort of right wing, and it's a big name to throw out there, but it's a name most people can relate to, the way that he used to play. That David Beckham right wing style of, he wasn't taking players on, he wasn't trying to run past players, but what he did was consistently cross the ball well, pass the ball well, find players well, not lose the ball, play the 1-2s off the inside, get down the line, use the fullback for the crosses. Just doing the simple stuff really well. And Riley kind of reminded me of that old school winger back in the day before wingers always had to run past defenders with the ball, the sort of wingers that could cross it from deep. And I feel like Riley was quite good out there on the right, but obviously when you've got players like Zach Clough trying to push into the team, Gibson trying to push into the team, left-sided players like Dickinson who are going to force other players to play on the right rather than the left, it becomes a bit harder. And maybe sometimes Joe Riley misses out because he just doesn't fit into the tactic of that team on that particular day. Now, the last one of these that we have in positions is the best attacker. I think I mentioned it a bit earlier on. I didn't want to keep saying the same name over and over and over again, but I've gone for Jordan Gibson in terms of best attacker. He's the most exciting player on the ball, that we've already just discussed that. He's the most fruitful player going forward so far for Carlisle this season in terms of assists and goals. He has a great eye for set pieces. He's proved that he can score from free kicks as well. And it's just an all-round threat for any team in this division. He seems to be one of those players where if you don't do your research on Carlisle United and you don't try and mark him out the game, Gibson's going to get clear and he's going to make you pay for it. So for me, I'm going to nominate Jordan Gibson for the best attacker. Liam, who are you saying best attacker?
Yeah, Jordan Gibson. In terms of just like, he's the only one in that attack that gives me like any confidence.
Yeah.
The rest of them, none of them can score. He's the only one that actually knows how to finish. So it would be, rude not to give it to Jordan Gibson, I think.
I feel like he's got that bit of confidence on the pitch as well. It rubs off on players around him
Yeah.
as well. He looks popular when he celebrates his goals. He looks popular. Do you know what I mean? There's plenty of players that want to come around him. In a stark contrast to what Tristan Abrahams has been doing, which is running straight over to the bench. So you can sort of see where his support has been coming from, building his confidence. And maybe other players get their confidence from other players on the pitch, and other players get their confidence from the coaching staff and that kind of thing. Wills, I mean, who are you going to say?
It would seem silly of me to having already said he's the best signing and most exciting player to watch, and he had a hand in the goal that I said was the best goal. It would seem really silly of me to now not say Jordan Gibson was the best attacker. And
so that's why you say Tristan Abrahams.
Yeah, he wasn't brought in to be our, main goal threat, but yet he's out to give a player who is, we've sung his praises already, and he is the top goal scorer at the club. I don't see how you can say best attacker is anyone else. Especially when you look at the players that he's up against in the attacking role. We've got Abrahams and we've got Abrahams and Clough, and then a bunch of younger players who haven't kicked on yet, haven't had a chance yet, the likes of Mampala, Young, Fishburn. I mean, it's only Gibson for me. Is the only one you can say. Hopefully, second half of the season, the end of the season, we were still saying Gibson's our best attacker, because as much as a goal threat he is for us, we need somebody who is more of a goal threat than him to actually be banging in the goals, because Gibson's more of a creative player. He's not supposed to be the biggest goal threat. It just so happens that we don't have anyone who's a bigger goal threat than him. So, yeah, so I'll be disappointed if at the end of the season we were still saying Gibson for this. I'd hope come the end of the season we were talking more about the assists that Gibson has made for some.
Yeah, I'd like to see that contribution sort of like evened out a little bit, and for somebody to be getting set up with the goals along the way. Now, before we dive into who we all think collectively is Carlisle's best overall player going forward, and I'm kind of thinking we're going to have a bit of a theme, so I'm going to break it up a little bit, and I'm going to just have an appetizing question before we reach the finale question. Most improved player is one of those awards that I would always get disappointed if I never won that in my Sunday League group, because in my Sunday League career, I was never really too impressive in training. The big gangly legs and the tall frame, normally having a bit of a strop during training, but when it came to game time, I liked a bit of physicality, and normally would find myself towards the end of the season getting thrown into the forward positions as the long balls would come into the box, and I would just be that guy that was a foot taller than everybody else and would be able to head the ball going forwards. But it would normally take a manager a full season to get through that process and start playing me up front. And so I would always look forward to the most improved player award, because that would be the category that I would be most likely to get to take something home in. And with all that being said, it is a bit of a donkey prize, but it is a prize after all. And I have gone for most improved player so far this season, Rod McDonald. That's who I've gone for. I feel like somebody that didn't fill the Carlisle United fans with too much confidence at the start of the season, especially with the first 2 or 3 performances that he had. There really wasn't enough options at the back at the time. Feeney got himself injured, and we really only had Whelan and McDonald. And after a couple of games, McDonald just started to find a bit of consistency in his game, and it's the consistency that has led me to naming him my best overall most improved player of the season so far. Wills, who have you gone for most improved player?
So there was a few that kind of came to mind. Danny Devine, perhaps. And like you mentioned, Corey Whelan earlier, I think that was mainly because you didn't rate him when you saw him in the pre-season friendlies. I didn't see him in those. I kind of quite rated him at the start of the season. And then because Rob McDonald in constant game time, I think that Devine might be a more improved if we saw him play more. But until that point, I'm going to go for Rob McDonald purely in terms of game time.
Yeah. He just had the chance to show it, hasn't he? Liam, who are you picking for your most improved player?
I'm going to pick Sam Fishburne, I think.
That's a good shout.
Up until about 10 minutes ago, I was because I think at the very start of the season, Sam Fishburne wasn't even a professional footballer. And since then, he's gone out on loan. He's scored how many goals in like 10 games away? Was it Lancaster he was away at? He scored a mad amount of goals. So he's gone from a not even a professional player to pretty much starting week in, week out for Carlisle. So I think even though he hasn't got his first goal yet, I think it's only a matter of time. And I think he has been the one he's the most improved.
The thing is, isn't it, when you say most improved, we're not necessarily talking about a player who is now one of the, we haven't got a player who started the season nowhere and is now everywhere, but as I gone from not a professional to, fairly regular starter.
Yeah. I'd say he's probably at the moment he's the first attacker on the team sheet at the moment. Physicality wise, he's definitely what we're needing at the moment, and he seems to be improving. And if he can start adding goals to his game, then man, definitely I feel like that's a good shout. I didn't really think about that whole learning curve that he's had playing from sort of the non-league at the start of the season, being on a youth contract still, that kind of thing. That's really well thought out. I might change my mind. But before I do change my mind, we've got 2 more categories to get through. Best team performance is one of those categories. And for me, it's a Keith Millen performance that got best overall performance. It was one of those games where it looked like we were finally starting to have an idea, an identity, and a game plan going into matches. And it's the 1-0 win at Walsall is the result I'm talking about. 88th minute, Tristan Abraham scored the winner, ended our 12-game winless streak in the league. It was just one of those performances where it looked like we knew what we were doing, lads. It looked like we actually had a clue how to defend. It filled me with a bit of confidence going forward. And that has to be it for me, the 1-0 win at Walsall. Liam, do you have a game to nominate?
It's the exact same one for me. It might be a little bit of recency bias, but I think that was just, it looked like it was the first game this season that reminded me of last season's winning run that we went on, because even though we left it really late to score, we were by far the better team in that game, I feel. And it was a real team effort. And, it must have been a good team effort if Tristan Abrahams has gone and scored, because he definitely can't do it by himself. So, Walsall for me as well.
Yeah, it's a great game. Wills, are you going to upset the apple cart? Do you have something different?
Back at other games we played. There's not, if you're thinking like best team performance, it's got to be a game that we've won. There's not much to pick from. There's a few kind of games where we were good in one half, like I think Exeter holding off one of the best teams in the division until John Relish got sent off. And there's a few like that where you can kind of pick one half of the game and say we were good for that bit. But the kind of like tempted for a speech, but quite. Salford were poor. Walsall were also pretty poor, but I think we maybe dominated them a bit more than we did Salford. So I went for Walsall. Yeah,
you went for Walsall as well. So the only thing about the Salford game is that when I looked at the stats and I compared them to the stats from the Walsall game, it looks like Salford were all over us. And then just sort of like trying to remember what the game was sort of like there going into the game.
It was spells. It Salford had like a spell on top in that. And became a bit. Did Salford equalise at one point, and then we took the lead again? I can't remember, but there was a spell in that game when Salford were on top. I can't think of a spell in the Walsall game when Walsall were on top.
That's it. And that's, for me, in the Walsall game, is that we looked confident, we looked dominant, we looked good, we looked like we had a game plan for the first time for 90 minutes that season. Yeah, you are true. There was some glimpses in the weeks before the Walsall game where we had a good 45 minutes or we had a good half an hour. That Exeter game being one of those examples. A lot of people were impressed by the performance until Mellish.
Yeah, and the new thought when we scored that goal.
And so we've had a couple of highlights, but nothing really that you could call a dominant performance up until, for me, that Walsall game where we just seemed to see the game plan through and did what we needed to do at the end of the game to really win it. Now, I'm being conscious of my Zoom countdown time. It's telling me I've got 5 minutes to get a move on, which is fine, lads, because all we've got to do now is nominate our best overall player for Carlisle United this season and then give a prediction. So best overall player, and I think this will be a quick one for most of us because he's been top of many of our categories so far in the rundown. Wills, who have you got for your best overall player?
Gibson,
yeah. Liam?
I feel like I've given all the explanations I can do already.
Yeah. Gibson.
It is, isn't it, lads? It's Gibson. It has to be Gibson. Yeah. It is Gibson, best overall sort of well-rounded player for the team. We've said enough about Gibson. I don't think we can sing his praises much more. So there's a sticker on its way to Brunton Park in the post for Brandon Gibson. A nice little halfway through the season award for him. I'm sure that'll exist. And lads, what I wanted to end on today was just a little bit of fun. We're going to use our Mystic Meg mindset. Liam, you're probably a bit too young for Mystic Meg. We're going to use our Mystic Meg mindset. We're going to try and predict and see the future. And I've asked you both for a random prediction and to sort of set the trend off so you kind of know what I'm looking for. I'll go first. And my little random prediction to happen between now and the end of the season is that Sam Fishburne is going to find his scoring boots, and by the end of the season, he's going to be in double figures. Liam, what's your prediction, mate?
My prediction is that Carlisle are going to get a lot richer because Dean Henderson looking likely to leave at Man United. I read somewhere we've got a 10% sell-on clause, and he's valued at around 40 million.
Jeez.
£1 million coming into Brunton Park. That immediately sells off the debt. So that's my prediction. We're going to be a lot richer come the end of the season.
I like that. I hope that comes true, man. I like that. Wills, your prediction, please, sir.
We're going to beat somebody 5-0. There's going to be a game this season because there's some bad teams. As bad as we've been, hopefully we're improving and can get a decent striker in. There are some really poor teams in this division, and I can just think, like, if we sort ourselves out, even if we're still just, there's going to be a game where someone just comes a cropper, and we end up scoring. And this might be where Sam Fishburne puts himself over there. Or the goals might be scored by the striker that we buy with the Henderson millions.
Well, lads, the second half of the season is shaping up to be a lot more exciting than the first half of the season. And thank you both. Thank you both so much for joining me for this little sort of improvised episode, this half-season awards review. I'm not sure what we're going to call it, but yeah, thank you both so much for joining us. Wills, you're here most weeks, so people know where to find you. Liam Denwood, you've been on here a few times, but not in a while. Is it still YouTube the best place to find you?
Yeah, YouTube and Twitter. Blue Army TV on YouTube and at Liam Denwood on Twitter. They're my two main socials.
That's it, man. That's it. So that's with the plugs out the way. And that's enough from us, I reckon, this week, lads, as Zoom Premium counts down to trying to charge me for the pleasure of having a freeway conversation with you two. And that's enough, actually. So do not forget to like and subscribe and follow not only myself here on the Blue Army podcast, but obviously go and follow Liam, like he's just said, over there on the YouTube with his Blue Army TV and on his Twitter. It's well worth. I'll put those links in the description for the episode. Lads, thank you so much for joining us, and there's nothing else to say really apart from bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.